Bruno Bucciarati saved quite a few people in the formation of his gang, be it Mista from the legal system, Fugo from loneliness, Abacchio from himself, though the one who needed his saving most was a young street punk who had a bad run-in with fate, the loud and basically illiterate but long-lastingly loyal loose cannon lad, Narancia Ghirga, and his stand, Aerosmith. Narancia Ghirga is one of the loudest and most aggressive members of Bruno's gang, while also maintaining an aura of innocence about him. He acts as the crew's eye in the sky, specializing in maintaining surveillance as they travel. He's also the comic relief of the group with his childish temper, but he's no less competent than anyone else in Bruno's gang, let alone Passione, and he's deadly efficient with his stand. Though before we get too into that, we should understand the meaning behind his name. Narancia Ghirga is an interesting name that seems to be two modified Italian words which yin-yang off each other for a bit. Starting first with his given name, Narancia, which is a slightly modified version of arancia, which is an Italian word for the fruit and color orange, with oranges themselves, the fruit, playing a pretty similar role thematically throughout the world, being the fruit of happiness and innocence and usually used to represent childlike innocence. Which is probably the reason why Araki chose this name for Narancia, as it highlights his more childlike and innocent side. But then you have his family name, Ghirga, which is the opposite of this and seemingly is a modified version of the Italian word griga, with griga meaning the color gray, as in both the color and the mood, and is the feminine form of grigio, describing a murky and somber feeling which helps balance out the arancia's more positive meaning, which works quite thematically for Narancia the character, as to get to the point in life where he was happy, he had to go through his miserable and gray period, all connected to his family life, hence gray being his family name. And this is a theme found throughout most of Narancia's character, this duality between happiness and bleakness, as seen in his personality and design. Be it him switching between a child who throws temper tantrums and thinks out loud, to a deadly strict and serious killer who's willing to engulf an entire street in flames or cut out his own tongue if it helps him trick or trap an enemy. And you can also see this in his design, as he's drawn to look like the youngest member of the gang, with larger rounded eyes and a smaller face than the rest, when he's actually the third oldest of the group. Along with this, he's given the most expressive reactions out of everyone in the group, minus Mista at times, and these details seem to be done so that when his personality does shift into its serious mode, his design can reflect this, as the added details to his face make him seem like almost a completely different person at times, showing us two sides of Narancia. Though, if you ask me, the best version of this contrast between childlike happiness and bleakness is seen in the design and use of his stand, Aerosmith. Aerosmith is a long-range stand which takes the form of a toy fighter plane mixed with that of a bomber plane, and it is piloted by a tiny fighter pilot named Mr. Smith. Now, the shape and design of the plane seems to be based off of a variety of planes found in World War II, with it having the curved wings of the F-4U Corsair or the HA-137, and having a similar nose or front to the P-51 Mustang. Though the point of the design is that it is a stand interpretation of what a fighter plane would be, so Araki takes his own liberties on its design, so it's not designed after one specific plane, just a bunch of them. Along with this, Araki says that he just wanted a stand that could fly around in combat, and that a simple ability is better for a protagonist. And simple is a great way to describe Aerosmith, as it is almost everything that it appears to be on the surface. It's a little bomber, a toy airplane. Well, a toy airplane armed with military-grade weaponry, so let's talk about that. Now, Aerosmith doesn't have a huge variety of abilities, but what it does have makes it extremely deadly. Starting first with fully loaded, as it is fully loaded with weaponry. 2. Underwing machine guns being its main form of attack, and these underwing machine guns are seemingly loaded with the stand equivalent to tracer rounds, given how they look when fired and how they spark on impact. Along with this, the ammunition in Aerosmith is unlimited, so it can fire for as long as Narancia wants. Along with the machine guns, Aerosmith also is armed with a single large, for its size, bomb that can be restocked assumedly at will. And this bomb packs a seriously destructive blow, as it is able to completely incinerate the inside of a car in a fiery explosion. Along with this arsenal of weapons, the propellers of Aerosmith can also double as a bladed weapon for close-range encounters. But if someone gets that close, they're already in a lot of danger, as Narancia has a habit of unloading the whole payload carelessly in the vague direction of a target, making most of his attacks unfocused and inaccurate, but the sheer amount will overwhelm most people. Though Aerosmith isn't all about combat, it actually has a second non-combat ability that allows Narancia to maintain surveillance for his group, this being Respiration Radar, and this takes the form of a small eyeglass-like object that appears around the user, seemingly based on a fighter pilot's own cockpit radar. And how this radar works is it tracks the breathing or carbon dioxide output levels of every living thing in the 10-meter range that Narancia's stand has. Along with this, Narancia is able to adjust the radar sensitivity as to not cloud his findings, but he claims that he can make it as sensitive enough to pick up even the breathing of tiny insects. And how this reading seems to work is the larger a creature's carbon dioxide output is, the bigger a blip they will become, and the more sporadic breathing, the more frequently they will output carbon dioxide, making the ability great for tracking those who he's fighting. Though this radar ability has its limits, as things with high carbon dioxide releases, like large crowds or roaring flames, act as sort of a mask for things that Narancia may actually be trying to track. And finally, even though that Aerosmith is piloted by a pilot who is named and addressed by Araki, Narancia still takes damage if the plane itself is damaged in a fight, and not if the pilot is damaged. So the plane itself is the full package, and not armor kinda like Silver Chariot. Now, Aerosmith gets his name from the American rock band Aerosmith, formed in 1970 in Boston, Massachusetts, with the name of the band being both based on Harry Nelson's third album, Aerial Ballet, and the band's drummer, Joey Kramer, saying that he's been writing the name of the band all day in his notebook. Though the way he wrote Aerosmith was unique to how it's supposed to be spelled, as it seemed to be based on the book he was reading in high school at the time, that being Aerosmith, spelled A-R-R-O-W. But instead of going with that spelling of arrow, they went with the arrow found in aerodynamics that you can see on the cover art of Aerial Ballet, combining the two together to forge one original name. Thus, the band's name was forged, and later on, Aerosmith, spelled as the band's name, sort of took on its own meaning, taking on the definition of someone who produces hot air and forges that into sound or music, aka someone who can turn air into music, an Aerosmith of sorts. Now, while we understand Aerosmith as a legend of rock and roll, they didn't start off that way. In fact, they weren't so lucky off the bat. During their first 2 years of their career, they struggled to keep an audience and relevancy, with the band relying on a last-ditch effort to survive as they released their first original single, Dream On, in 1973. Dream On is one of the most important songs in Aerosmith's history, pulling the band out of a tailspin and letting them in 21st place on the US's top 200 tracks, and when it was re-released in 1975, it became an American top 10 hit. The song itself is a pet project of Steve Tyler, one of the band members, who has been working on it since he was 17 to 18 years old, with him saying that the song is about the hunger for success and the shit you have to put up with when you're working your way to the top in music, and how you need to keep working towards your dream and dreaming on until you finally make that dream come true. And this history of the band and its rise to its legendary status fits Narancia as a character, as early in life Narancia's mother died of an eye disease, which is a tragedy that ruined his relationship with his father, leaving Narancia neglected for most of his life, to the point that he was fully ignored and Narancia could just stop going to school if he wanted to, living on the streets and stealing and hanging out with the local boys. And it was here on the streets that he developed his own form of beliefs, and one of the most important ones is that friendship is the most important thing in the world, and that his friends were the only people who cared about him, or so he assumed, as his trust in his friends was how he was easily manipulated, as one of the older kids told Narancia that he should dye his hair like him, and so when Narancia did it, he used Narancia to get off scot-free on a crime, while Narancia was detained and sent to a juvenile correctional facility. Here he was regularly beaten by the guards for his aggressive attitude, and these beatings caused Narancia's eye to swell and get infected, leaving him afflicted with the same eye disease that stole his mother's life away from him. And soon rumors would spread that Narancia was cursed by fate to die the same way his mother did, and these rumors were made worse by the fact that they were spread by the same people that Narancia trusted the most, the friends he grew up on the streets with, causing him to then be isolated by that friend group, leaving him completely alone. Narancia, with nowhere to go, accepted that this was his fate and that he would die as his mother did, until one day, during his raiding of a trash can outside of a local restaurant for scraps to eat, Fugo stumbled upon him, took him to Bruno, and Bruno, seeing a kid in a rough spot, offered him a warm meal, a place to stay, and even paid for his treatment. Along with this, Bruno seemed to actually care about Narancia to a great degree, more than he's ever felt in his entire life, giving Narancia this father figure of sorts that he wanted to follow and see succeed. And even though he tried to return to school, after about 6 months, he decided to quit that, join Passione, take Polpo's lighter test, and pass with flying colors. He was determined not to see his own dream, but the dream of Bruno be realized. Thus is the origin for his stand Aerosmith. It is a stand to help him work to achieve the dream of someone he cares about. And it is also effectively a representation of Narancia's lost childhood, and his loss of a healthy relationship with an authority figure, which is similar to actually Keicho from Part 4, hence the reason why I believe it takes the form of a toy. Along with this, Narancia's upbringing also probably influenced his taste in music as well, loving the music of Tupac and Snoop Dogg, which of course are artists that focus on an anti-authoritarian message, all the while keeping the idea and themes of respecting your own crew. And friendship is still one of the most important things to Narancia, though Narancia has difficulty making decisions for himself, finding it more easy to just take orders from his superiors than having to make decisions on his own. He, in some sort of twisted way, has become sort of a child soldier, hence why Aerosmith is a warplane instead of a civilian plane or some other plane. It's effectively a representation of childhood mixed with being a fighter or a soldier, so that's another kind of callback to Keicho as well. Though once the time came that Narancia had to make a decision for himself to defect from Passione or stay, Narancia was left in a complete panic. The only father figure that he's ever had in his life that actually mattered was leaving him behind, and he was too afraid to make the first step on his own, as the last time he made a huge life decision for himself, it left him completely isolated. Though once he noticed Trish's own injury inflicted on her by someone who she should have trusted, that pushed him over the limit, deciding not only to defect from Passione, but defect from the boss who actively spit in the face of his most important values, saying all the while that he and Trish were the same, that their injuries were the same, now if only their taste was the same. Though he does develop sort of a bond or relationship with Trish while they are working together, as Narancia's more openness about his feelings and wearing his opinion on his sleeve helped Trish understand him and connect to him the easiest among the gang. Though his decision to follow Bruno does lead Narancia to seemingly endless hardship, as every fight gets more and more dangerous, being barely able to overcome the duo of Clash and Talking Heads, but soon finding his abilities to not really suit any of the situations afterwards, with B.I.G. taking him out rather easily, Abakio's sudden and unexpected death leaving him shaken and sad, and Green Day leaving him basically incapacitated the whole fight. Though through it all, Narancia tried to stay positive, keeping a more upbeat outlook on things, minus his total freakout during Abakio's death. But to him, as long as Bruno was working towards something, he would work towards it as well, and it all comes to a head when they experience the power of Requiem, and Narancia excitedly proclaims how that as soon as they get the arrow and take out Diavolo, he can start fantasizing more about his future. He'll go back to school, he'll go home, and he'll have his favorite dish. Narancia, for the first time, is dreaming about himself, fantasizing about the life that he wants to have. But soon, these dreams are cut short, as in the heat of the conflict with the boss and the entire Requiem situation, in a moment of erased time, Narancia, still in Giorno's body, is murdered. The death is probably one of the strongest in all of the entirety of JoJo. It comes out of nowhere, it's sudden, it's brutal, it has zero grace to it. He's impaled with multiple rods and died without even a moment to realize what has happened. And it was Narancia's ability to dream in the moment, in the final encounter with the main antagonist, that helped this death hurt an extra bit more than what most deaths we see in JoJo are like. He is truly one of the most innocent people. Sure, a violent dumbass, yes, but basically a child, and very important to everyone's lives. And this death is everything that Giorno hates about the boss and how he's running Passione, and reinforces the stakes in their conflict. And thus, to honor him, Giorno leaves Narancia's body in a bed of flowers from his hometown, saying that he will bring him to his hometown to be buried. Though what makes this death that extra bit tragic is that Narancia, dying in the erased time, leaves him in the exact position he was trying to avoid his entire life. Alone. Luckily, it being so quick means that he didn't suffer much, but it stings all the same when you think about it. This death, alongside Bruno's later on in the fight, is a huge motivation for Giorno's success. Along with this death being a major plot point in the light novel Purple Haze Feedback, with Fugo feeling guilty for even introducing Narancia to the gang at all. And it probably stands as the best and most impactful death from a writing perspective in the entire series as well, and for most readers. Though if you want a more in-depth discussion on Narancia's death, along with a discussion on death at all in JoJo, there's a great video on it by Oceans called The Evolution of Death in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's really good, so you should go check it out. Narancia's death is just such a good example of a well-written sucker punch death at the very end of the series. It's this death that is narratively both pointless yet extremely important at the same time. It carries this guttural, disgusting feeling that makes you really hate Diavolo down to his core, all the while showing off how deadly King Crimson can be when you let your guard down. The one benefit you can take away from this loss of life is that it led to the positive ending for the crew, no matter how somber that positive ending actually ends up being. As we see the one who used his ability to help others dream on, have his dream carried out by those he impacted. A somber but happy ending for a boy with a somber but happy name, who lived a somber but happy life. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MightyNuthBadGuy. And if you want to live a somber but happy life, you can start so by buying yourself a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimonetta.com.